if I had to give one piece of advice about how to be more curious, how to be more creative, it's doing different things constantly, all the time. My favorite expression I use probably too much with my team, which is sometimes you have to go through the sewer to come out the other side clean. Let's start with like the bad ideas. It's a little bit of the throw spaghetti against the wall, but it's even further than that. I love what I do. I love running this company. I love my teams. What we do is so important and meaningful. And sometimes people think having fun and being serious run counter to each other. And yet I actually think they run hand in hand with each other.
You're listening to the Genius Scouts podcast with Justin Oberman and Aaron Zakowski. Join us each week as we bring you exclusive conversations with the business leaders and innovators you need to know about, sharing the secrets that fuel their success and power their personal brands. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Genius Scouts, where we explore the undiscovered minds reshaping our world. And today, we're diving into the unique mind of Jeremy Sirota, who is the CEO of Merlin, the world's largest member-led music organization representing the digital rights of over 20,000 independent labels and distributors. Jeremy's path is fascinating, from technology law at Morrison and Foerster to SVP at Warner Music Group, where he led business and legal affairs for WEA and ADA, to Facebook's music team, where he helped shape their approach to music licensing across Facebook, Instagram, Oculus, and Messenger. Now, as Merlin's CEO since January 2020, he's transformed how the organization champions independent music in the digital landscape and age, or whatever you want to call it. The way Jeremy's creative mind works is very unique, and it shows. But what makes Jeremy's leadership philosophy truly unique started with 7 words from his 10-year-old daughter. "Dad, no more TED Talks today." This wake-up call transformed how he approaches leadership, shifting from being the person with all the creative answers to creating frameworks for others to find creative solutions as well. In a world obsessed with larger-than-life personalities, Jeremy calls himself, and I love this, an unsung creative technocrat, which basically it means a process-driven leader who drives change without fanfare and cares more about people than ego. This innovative approach, or his innovative approach, like bad idea days and cross-functional teams, have led to groundbreaking partnerships with Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitch. Beyond the music industry, Jeremy's insights on leadership apply everywhere. He strongly believes that creativity isn't just for artists. It's about unleashing potential, embracing new ideas in challenging times, and celebrating even small improvements in the process. From coding as a kid in Orange County to managing a global organization that represents 15% of the digital music market, today we're going to explore how Jeremy blends this technocratic leadership with creative vision, and what it takes to thrive in an industry that refuses to stand still in a world that also refuses to stand still. Jeremy, welcome to Genius Scouts.
Thank you very much. That was quite an intro. I appreciate that. You actually were reminding me of many things that have happened along my career as you were going through it. Including one of my favorites, which is when I worked at Morrison and Foerster at the law firm, their website is mofo.com. And a question I used to get asked a lot is, do they get the joke? And the answer is yes, they do get the joke.
Was it an intentional joke, though?
I don't know. I was not there at the origin story of when they registered the domain name. But the 2 original founders of the law firm were Mr. Morrison and Mr. Foerster. So it was a bit of happenstance that 100 years later, MoFo came to stand for what it does in popular slang.
One of the things I didn't mention in there, because I kind of wanted you to talk about, you also talk a lot about having a Cheeto moment. What's the thing with the Cheetos? What's the thing? Like, if you go to your LinkedIn page, there's a picture of you, your banner image is you eating Cheetos. What does that have to do with all of this?
Yeah. So two two elements to that. One is Cheetos are completely my guilty pleasure. They are just, I love them to death. I don't know why. There's something, it's not food. I know that. And I don't keep them in the house because otherwise I would eat a whole bag of them. And that's what sort of triggered it in my head was I'd gotten to a place in my career, which is I just go. When you work at a law firm, you work anywhere from minimum of 10 to 15, 16, sometimes 24 hours straight. I pulled many, many all-nighters. You worked weekends. So working a lot has never been my challenge. I can put in as many hours as I need to. And that was what became part of my challenge at a certain point in my career, where I wasn't finding any more joy in what I was doing. But instead of trying to step back and zoom out and look at my career and what it was that I valued or wanted to do, instead I just started eating more Cheetos. And I did all the opposite of what I now advise people to do. And I didn't step back and say, what do I want out of a job? Where do I want my career to be? I just kept eating more Cheetos. I just kept working more and more. And I would be at the office sometimes till 9, 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes I would skip lunch because I was just eating those Cheetos endlessly. And there was a diminishing law of return on that, which is Cheetos are amazing. I love them. But by the time you've gotten to the end of the bag, you're not enjoying it. You're almost like robotic about what you're doing. And that's a sign when you're in your career and you're starting to be more robotic, that you're not finding joy, you're not learning, you're not contributing, that it's time to move on. So that's the Cheetos metaphor for me.
And is that like how it both in terms of like that's not necessarily going from Facebook to Merlin, but that has also something to do with kind of like the No More TED Talks, right? I mean, you're well. Can you explain? Like, so, okay, maybe elaborate a little bit more on that story.
Yeah.
Like
So
somebody like your daughter, like what you give TED Talks to your daughter? Yeah.
It's not that, well,
Like with the
I don't think I'm
microphone
giving.
and everything.
Yeah, when she sees the microphone, come on, she runs away. Uh, it it's not that I ever intentionally thought or meant that I was giving TED Talks. You know, she's 13 now, but when they were about 9 or 10 in school, they started watching limited numbers of them to help them learn and grow and develop. But there's a
But
certain style.
you showed them to, or they were in their
Her
school?
school would. Her school would.
Her school would. Oh, that's nice
Yes,
school.
and it's nice, yeah, and so there's a certain style to a TED Talk, and what I
Yeah.
realized is that sometimes I would make the point, and then I would make the point again, and then I'd say it again, and I would keep going down the rabbit hole, and instead of stepping back and listening, or stepping back and thinking of what is the question I need to ask, or even just stepping back and not saying anything altogether, that was a really powerful lesson for me about the importance of what you were talking about. And this is a word I use constantly this year. I just started using it in 2025. I used to always use frameworks for, you need to create the frameworks for people to succeed in. And now the word I really love is scaffolding. It's this idea of in a scaffold, you're helping create the framework for people, but they can now picture themselves as builders, that they're now contributing to the process. And that's what I took away from my daughter was I need to step back and give people the tools, give them the scaffolding for their success, but then let them go and let them run with it. And that's going to mean they're not always going to do it exactly the way I would do it. Or maybe they're going to make mistakes along the way. But if they have the right scaffolding around them, they're going to succeed and they're going to thrive within that.
It's almost something that you're hitting on there is kind of interesting, which is that it's almost like a different, because a TED Talk can be extremely useful and you can feel very inspired by a TED Talk, but the way that it's delivered is kind of, in this condescending, not necessarily condescending, but like know-it-all sort of professor sort of way. In order to actually get people to do things, like to do what you're talking about or whatever, do you find that that requires like a whole different way of talking?
That's a good question. The first thing I'll say is I am sure if I had to deliver a TED Talk in the style and the tone and the arc of how they do it, I could. But I'm I'm a little bit of a I'm going to use this word. It's not the best word, but just a messy talker sometimes.
Mm.
In a sense that I'm not the most polished speaker. If I prep, of course, I can operate and act in that way. But I tend to just say what's on my mind and then say, actually, maybe that's not what I meant. Let me try that again. And people respond to that better because it doesn't feel that you've gone and scripted it. And
Mm-hmm.
they can relate to it in a way that that corporate speaking, I'm presenting to you, here's the theme of what I'm going to say, and here are the three examples, and here's your task to go do it. As opposed to when you have this more organic way of speaking, you give space for other people to come in. And that was, if you tie that back to the No More TED Talks dad, that was another concept that was really impactful, was to pause, do the uncomfortable silence, or ask a very leading question that can't just be answered with yes or no. To prep people in advance of like, here's some ideas of things I want to go through, and to give them room, because not everyone can operate on the fly. I know the way my brain works. Like, you give me a question, you give me a topic, I'll spin it in a direction. And I love that. I love being on the fly. But not everyone operates that way. So you're also trying to, going back to the same thing with my daughter, you're trying to meet them where they are and then show them what's next, but not script it for them. Because when they feel part of a process, then they're more inspired to do more around that. And they feel they have more room and latitude to operate. Because otherwise, you box them in, you're going to get exactly what you just asked for. And that's maybe not what you actually need, because some of those best ideas come from the people who work within your organization. It does not come from the top down. You give them the scaffolding, and then you give them the room to maneuver.
I think it's interesting what you're saying, because it sounds like there's a process of almost just thinking out loud. I think it's what you're describing a little bit, and there's an authenticity of that where you don't come off as if you're being authoritative to the other side. You're not telling them what to do. You're just thinking, I'm not sure I'm right, but here's how I'm thinking. Maybe you can accept some of this or not accept some of it. As opposed to, there's that other way of, being preachy, and maybe I would do that as a parent and being very literal, as Justin always likes to say about me, and it's quite
You
hard.
are a former Deloitte accountant.
Well, that's hard to shed sometimes, even 20 years later. But as Justin has taught me, and I've learned in the advertising world, being able to seduce somebody, tell a story, and let people feel like they've come to it by themselves, as opposed to, preaching at them, and especially with our kids. But I think even, in the workplace, being able to seduce people with a story is one way to talk. But I think what you're describing resonates, because a lot of people just can't do that. They can't be on the fly to kind of tell a story and influence people in that way. But the authenticity of what you're describing is really interesting.
What you kind of reminded me of was, there's the famous analogy of Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address, which is, I forget how many lines, it's a certain amount of lines, very short. What a lot of people don't know is that President Lincoln wasn't the main speaker. This other orator, and the point of the fact that I can't remember his name is sort of the point of this. But he was one of the most famous orators of the time. Back then there was no TV and stuff, so you actually went and watched people speak. And before Abraham Lincoln spoke, this guy spoke for 2 hours. 2 hours in the field in the middle of Gettysburg. Nobody remembers a single, not even a line of what that man said. And then Abraham Lincoln stands up and he spoke so quickly. The people thought he was just when he sat down, people were confused because they thought he was just introducing himself. He was also not a very good speaker. He had a very high pitched voice and a very, they always portray him with a deep voice, but he sounded like a hillbilly, instead of chair, he said cheer, and he was, but he was so homely and so sporadic, like you said, that it gravitated people towards them. And I think that's kind of an interesting insight for a lot of people to hear.
Well, one of the main elements of the style that I had to develop, because when I showed up at Merlin in 2020, we very quickly pivoted because of COVID, and suddenly we're shutting down our offices. Everything's by Zoom. And when you are a CEO and you say something, people sometimes go and do things because they
Is that a shock to you? It's like, wait a minute.
Well, it was a shock in the sense that my prior job on the Facebook music team, we were all virtually peers. We all had a similar level of experience. There were very few of us. In the early days, there was only about 10 or 12, maybe 20 or so by the time I left. And we were all operating on a similar level. And that meant there was just a more organic flow to the conversation and how you operated. And I had to really readjust the way I operated when I came to Merlin. I was a first-time CEO. It was a first-time change in CEO for the organization. We're going through this, period of time where there's so much dramatic change for every industry, but for music, touring was being shut down. Physical was heavily impacted. And I wish I had known that word scaffolding back in 2020, because if I set it up for people the right way, I'm just thinking about this idea. I'm not committed to it. All I want you to do is spend 30 minutes exploring this and see what you come up with. And then we'll make a decision about what we do next. Like, we're trying to get a signal, go, no go. And instead, people took away from what I was saying as if it was, gospel. It was the truth. And it took me a long while to adjust how I operated. And some of those people had to get used to me, but I really had to get used to this level at this, in this role. And now I just do it automatically with everyone. There's just an idea. I'm floating it. I want impact. Where do you go from here with this, if anywhere?
So it's like an example of that. And to be honest, it's like one of the reasons why you're on this podcast is this story that you tell. I forget where I read it from, but the story that you tell about bringing in, like, I guess it was like all your VPs or whatever into a boardroom, sitting down and then saying, okay, for the next week, or maybe it was for the next or the day or whatever, I want you to focus on coming up with ideas to destroy this company. Can you? So, like, did this happen after the TED Talk speech? Like, did this happen? Like, first of all, like, frame it like when this happened, and then like tell everyone listening, like, why the hell you would do that.
This evolved from, we had done 2 different SWOT analyses of our company. So I had done one internally. So for those who don't know, SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So it's a 4-box where you go through your company, you identify the strengths of your company, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and it leads you to thinking about your company in new ways and new ways of operating. And we had done that with the executives. We had done it with the Merlin board as well. And it was really constructive and helpful. And then I thought, well, let's just take it one step further. What if an outsider was trying to take our company down? How would they do it? What if we wanted to take our company down? How would we do it? And
that's an absurd question. I mean, I can't imagine.
But the absurd question leads to different ways of thinking. And that's sort of one of the core ways that I help our company is, yes, everyone has a core job, they have responsibilities, achieving, really powerful partnerships and good deals for our members with our digital partners. Yes, creating new opportunities. All those are core to what we do in our mission. But so much of it is around process improvements, right? How do we interface better? How do we communicate better? And you don't learn that from just doing the same thing over and over again. You do that by trying to bust yourself out of I think of it like a roller coaster, right? When you're going on a roller coaster, it's a ride and you're just along for the ride and it's a set path and that's all you do, right? What I want to do is break the roller coaster apart and throw people's thinking into new ways. So you have to get them thinking in different ways. Sometimes you physically take them out of the office and where you're at, and you put them in a completely different environment. And when you force people to think different ways, you're not actually trying to destroy your company, but you're fundamentally rethinking how you approach your job and your organization. And it just opens up new ways of thinking. And so you're like, oh, I never put these things together. Or people start talking from different departments. We love to do these cross-functional summits where we get different people from different departments who sometimes don't even necessarily interact with each other that often. And then we try to like force them to explore ideas that aren't part of their core remit. And you'd be shocked who's someone who sits on the outside of something and says, oh, yeah, I've always seen you do it that way, but did you know you could do this? And you start to break down assumptions. Like maybe that person just assumed that it had already been explored and there was a reason they weren't doing it. And that's been a really interesting way. And you have to do it. You can't do this all the time. But when you do it at the right times with the right people, it's really quite powerful.
It's really interesting because what you're talking about reminds me a lot of, Edward de Bono and lateral thinking. He would go into companies like to Boeing and be like, what would happen if the plane landed upside down? And it like led to some sort of life-saving feature that they, the engineers never would have thought of, or this other guy, Roger Van Oeck, who wrote these books, The Kick at the Side of the Pants. And he would go into IBM, into painting companies and get people to like think differently by forcing them into these kind of exercises. But I think Roger Van Oeck is still alive. Oh, and Brian Eno, right? And his deck of cards. But these guys are kind of old. You don't see a lot of people talking about these things anymore, or this way of thinking anymore. What happened? Like this used to be almost like an entire industry of like these. There was always a guy who was like the chief creative thinking officer of the world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what happened? Why is there now only Jeremy Sirota talking about these things?
Hopefully there are some others. Maybe some people are just doing it quietly behind the scenes. I always go back to, I've spoken to a lot of CEOs recently, and if there's one through line around each of them and sort of their ways of thinking and thinking differently, it's always an insatiable curiosity. And some of this just stems from the fact that I'm just really curious about the world. I'm really curious about virtually anything. I will find something around that's just like so fascinating. And I sometimes rabbit hole into it to the point of like, I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore because I've gone so deep. And I wonder whether most people who have that way of thinking tend to go into the creative fields, which I thought about doing. That was a bit of my original path. And I pivoted more towards this business side, but I never lost that curiosity. So let me just give you a real life example from last night. I was just sitting down and, we launched this program called Merlin Connect that's all about connecting to emerging platforms, startups, scale ups, and how do we make the entire licensing process around quality music easier for them to access in a world in which it's really difficult to do that right now.
Can you just explain that? Just a little bit of backdrop, like what it's licensing music is hard.
Licensing music is hard, and there's a couple of reasons. Just a basic one: if you wanted to go license music, say from an artist or say a label where you really like all their bands, you don't even know who to pick up the phone to. Who do you even call? Or if an email lands in the inbox because you found their email on their website or you found someone on LinkedIn, 99 out of 100 times, they're going to ignore you because there's so much happening. There's so much going on. The music industry, last decade was a decade of disruption. I call this the decade of upheaval. So everyone is just pulled in a million directions. Even once you get their attention, they have so many other competing priorities that are generating revenue for them right now to make the time and space to go understand what the startup's trying to do, understand the business model, understand whether there's a real opportunity there, then go in, enter a deal, deliver all the content. It's not actually that easy. it takes a lot of time and space. And so what we're trying to do is simplify that at every level. The accessibility of the music, the licensing of the music, and even the operational aspects of it. Like we're really thinking more, not just as a licensing partner, almost as more of an investor. We're investing our members' music, which is their capital, into startups and scale-ups. And that then got me thinking yesterday about not once again, this is what I always say to my company. I'm not necessarily want to do this. I just want to explore it. What if we did Merlin live? We did a live concert. What would that mean? What would that entail? And then I just said, the field is wide open. Go explore it. Do I think we're going to go launch a live concert series? No, probably not. But it's going to get people thinking in different ways about, okay, why would we do it? What's the value of this? If my CEO told me I had to go do this, how do I create the most opportunity from this? And somewhere along that path, you're going to find something new that you hadn't thought about before. And it may be a different opportunity. It may be a current way of operating that you realize you're going to do differently. Maybe it's a way we relate to our members, our clients, our members in a different way. And it's those explorations that help companies to continue to evolve, because staying still is falling behind in this day and age.
Jeremy, I wanted to ask you, going back to something that you touched on, and I know Justin smiled at it when you said it, curiosity, right? It's been a big topic of conversation in our office between Justin and I lately in terms of the necessity. Is it a necessity or not to be a leader, to be curious? Justin argues that you must have it. I've said maybe, right? So obviously I recognize the benefit of curiosity. You know more things, you can bring in more ideas from other places. But do you believe it's a critical step in order of being a leader? And I understand some of the questions you're saying, curiosity within my own business and within my own world. I think all of us have that kind of curiosity, and we always want to get better in our little section of the world. But how critical is that broader, just I want to know everything in the world? And is that something that can be learned to be that curious in your mind?
Good questions. I would say at a leadership level, it's not necessarily essential. What I will say is that it's essential within an organization. Because if you don't have people who have curiosity, even just curiosity about what does Sarah do down the hallway? I'd like to understand her role better. Mm-hmm. Within our company, we recently dubbed this we always have a theme for the years. Last year's theme was the year of connectivity. This year, it's the year of collaboration. One of the key ways you learn to collaborate is you're curious about what other people do. And so I think organizational curiosity is important. Within a leader, absolutely it's helpful, 100%. Because you're sending a message to the rest of the organization about what matters. That's where leaders are most helpful. There's all sorts of things leaders do. They could be raising funds. They could be finding new clients. They could be really good at talent assessment and bringing in the right people. Organizational setup. Maybe they have their own investors or board they have to manage. There's all different aspects of a competent, capable leader. A leader that can help create breakthroughs, I would say curiosity has to be there. Competent, well-run companies don't necessarily need that. But breakthrough companies that want to do new things and operate in new ways to continue to outpace the competition. And then you ask whether you can learn it. Great question. I don't know, because I've always just been curious. So it's hard for me to step outside of that and say, what would it be like to learn it? But there are ways you go about it. Just simply reading. One of the best pieces of advice I give every time I talk to high school or college students: scroll less, read more. Reading itself just triggers your imagination. Mm-hmm. And you may not have or may not believe you have a curious mind, but if you just trigger your mind to think in different ways, then you're going to be able to lead in that way as well.
Do you think there's a difference in reading more versus, let's just say, just intentionally looking for new topics on YouTube or online to watch videos? Is there an intrinsic difference in the page, paper, or even let's say a Kindle versus watching something that's on a topic that you've never learned about before?
1,000%. You want to go learn how to put up a shelf properly in your living room? Go watch a YouTube video. You want to get your brain bouncing in different directions? Then you need to read a book, because what a book does, which is fundamentally different. I would even say physical books. I have a Kindle. It makes it a lot easier when you travel on vacation. But a physical book, your brain's it's just different. The way the words bounce at you, the way the touch affects you. You can pause in different ways. Like when you watch a video, you can't really pause. Like, yeah, you can pause the video, but you're just kind of along for the ride, which is why I actually don't listen to audiobooks. I'll listen to podcasts a lot, but that's because I can just wander out of the podcast. Like I'll go for 5 minutes sometimes and realize I have no idea what's going on because my brain just started wandering in different directions. And that's what a book affords you, is that ability to daydream. I mean, no one talks about adults and daydreaming. I don't understand why.
Go on.
If there's two or three things I would take from being a kid, I've never thought about this before, but one is napping, even just laying down for just 5 minutes, not even falling asleep. Like, that was such a critical part of growing up.
I'm glad you said that, because I actually tend to take a 20-minute power nap most afternoons, and Justin gives me a hard time at it every day.
Well, I will let your boss tell you what is or isn't acceptable in the workplace, but I would say,
I'm not his boss, but you know.
Oh, fair.
Well, that's my wife.
There we go. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's really helpful. Even just getting off all of the devices, just laying down there, letting your brain wander. And that part of that also is just daydreaming. That's where curiosity comes in. That's where reading comes in. Your brain's just headed in different directions than you would normally do if you're locked and loaded, scrolling through videos or listening to an audiobook. And it's a superpower. And those who do it, you can almost see the difference. You can almost tell when you meet someone, do they read books or not? You should test that. Test that out. The next 10 people you meet who are new, spend 30 minutes talking to them and then make a decision about whether they read a lot of books or not, and then ask and see whether you're correct or not.
It's really interesting listening to all this, because especially with curiosity, the one place where my mind goes is always with Leonardo da Vinci, and the biography that was written by him about him by Walter Isaacson. It has this beautiful intro, this one paragraph where he talks about Einstein. Like these are like Einstein and Steve Jobs, and well, maybe not Steve Jobs. It was like Einstein and somebody else, I forgot. And it's like, these are geniuses, right? And they're born geniuses, and really you can't become a genius like Einstein. Like you just can't. You're born with that IQ, with these abilities, with these talents. Same thing like Mozart, people like that. And he goes, but what's interesting about Leonardo da Vinci is he was born with none of those things. There's no innate talent. He was a bastard child, and he wasn't even allowed to go to school. He just like apprenticed, but he had this insatiable curiosity, which taught him to learn how to draw. And then he would draw everything that he could, and dig up dead bodies to draw. Like he would go to, and he had these crazy to-do lists, right? Like today, 1, map Milan. 2, describe the tongue of a woodpecker. 3, find a mathematician to show me how to square a circle. 4, like it's just like, and that was like Tuesday, and I was a little curious about Aaron's choice of the word leadership, because Leonardo da Vinci wasn't a leader of anything. He was not a leader of the Renaissance. We think of him that way maybe, but at the time he was kind of like this weirdo. Even like Michelangelo thought, like, oh, that's the old man weirdo. And he worked for other people. He died in service of a king. And the curiosity was to spur innovation and creativity. It wasn't so much leadership. But I think that what you're sort of teaching to the world, or what you're saying is for leaders that want to become more creative, right? Or want to incorporate either become more creative themselves or instill innovation into their team, which really seems like a very, very difficult thing to do, which is astonishing when you look at what you've done. And so that's why you're on this podcast, because we want the world to say, hey, look what this guy's doing over here. You know, he's seems to be doing these things. He's not like coming in like Edward DeBano, you know, one, you know, as long as he's there, the innovation happens. Once he leaves, you know, it's like you've said, you've set up teams, you walk away, they solve it on their own. And so that seems like you've solved almost an impossible task of Aaron's question, which is, can you teach creativity? It seems like the answer is yes. How do you do it? What are you doing?
Probably a couple ways you do that. One is, and this is really important, you have to give people license to make mistakes. You have to give them space for that. The second is you have to consistently not just tell them, but show them that new ways of thinking, new ways of operating are accepted, desired. I would rather someone come to me with 10 ideas that don't work than only one person out there suggesting ideas that work. That's where I want that instilled through every level of the company. And you have to just be consistent. So this is where the other leadership qualities come in, the consistency of it. Constantly talking about it, constantly presenting it, showing how that works. I do that with my executives. So when I have one-on-one with any of my directs, not always, right? Sometimes you have a punch list, you just got to get through it. But I'll sometimes just throw an oddball question at the top in there. And we might spend 1 minute or we might spend 20 minutes on that, right? You throw out, he didn't have much good qualities in him, but Donald Rumsfeld had this concept of snowflakes, where he would just send these odd missives to people to get them thinking. That was Merlin Live for me last night. It was just like, I have no idea. I didn't even know what to do with it. But I knew the person I sent it to was going to be really excited about it and explore it and come back to me. And they know now that I'm not looking for you to go spend days on this. Go spend 30 minutes on this and see what you come up with. And you just never know where these things are going to go to. It's like Google had this concept of the 90-10 rule. 90% of your job is your job. Go do your job. Right? You can explore within that. We want you to do new things. But then they said 10% just anything you want to do. Explore ideas. And that's really what I want. I don't know if I have a 90-10 rule. I don't know what the percentages should be. But I want people saying, I'm just going to take this Friday afternoon and explore this idea and see what can come of it. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. And then you also have to be comfortable that maybe things slow down a little bit around core jobs. And then you have to be accepting of that as well. You have to be like, okay, I know people can't do, if they only have time in the day to do 10 things, I can't expect them to do 12.
I'm curious how you apply that in an organization that's clearly becoming very inquisitive and always thinking about constant self-improvement based on the questions that you're asking, the creativity that you're developing there. How do you deal with keeping your ship heading in a straight line at the same time that you're constantly coming up with new ideas and questioning your previous assumptions about things, which I think is a core practice we've been discussing now of getting better? But you could almost feel like every day you're shifting a different direction. I know it's a challenge that, Justin and I with our agency, Genius Scouts, we're in the early stages relatively of this organization, but I feel almost every couple of days we come up with a great idea because we're constantly learning and iterating and all these, and that it almost feels like our messaging or our direction could be shifting frequently. And early on, that's okay. That's how you have to find, your product market fit and get your momentum and all that. But with a larger organization that you run, how do you deal with determining, there's all these great ideas we can come up with, there's all these new innovations we could do, but making sure that we stay constant and moving in the right direction?
Well, the first is I did a terrible job of this my first 2 years. Just bluntly, I confused people. I created uncertainty about what my priorities were. And I did a disservice to the company. And that was where I had to make the pivot into, you need to, and I'll reuse the word scaffold again. You also need to create, actually, I'll use a different word, containers for it. You can't constantly be like, this is the way we do things, and I'm just going to redo it every month. So one of the two concepts we talk about a lot are progress over perfection and iteration. We're not trying to fundamentally change things every day. We're just trying to iterate and improve. That's the idea. It's like, how do we continue to improve? And we have, like many companies, well, actually, I don't know, maybe many companies don't have it, but we have a North Star. We have our values that matter to us as a company, and we have our operating principles. So, for example, one of our operating principles has been automate as much as possible. Why? Because then we can free ourselves up to do more improvements, that we can iterate, we can explore more ideas. And so when you free more time up, you have more space to think. That was the number one request that I got when I came to the company, is we want to be more proactive. And that's great. I mean, you can't ask for a better culture at a company, right? Between a culture of kindness and a culture where people want to be proactive, like that's what I came into. That's what the prior CEO of the company delivered to me. That's incredible. And I felt a huge responsibility to continue to encourage that and help that bloom and grow. And so that's one of the ways. So you have to have a discipline as well around this. And that's why I go back to consistent messaging. And then also, you just can't have a million big new ideas every year. Merlin Connect, around our approach to startups, was an idea that we started last year. And now we're solidifying and professionalizing our approach this year. Merlin Engage, which is just launched today, in fact, is our mentorship program aimed at the next generation of female leaders. We're now in year 3. Thank you. It's very exciting. It was we just had our kickoff call today. And, every year we iterate. We don't blow it up and start fresh every year. We say, what can we do to improve it this year? What can we add on? What can we layer on to make this better? We have a solid foundation. Let's layer on to it. And so that's another way we approach it. We are looking right now at our royalty processing system. It's not, it's called ETL, extraction, transform, load. Don't take ETL and just blow it up. Look at it at each level of how it operates and find out how can we improve it. And so you just have to be thoughtful about where you're going to start a new program, where you're going to try to improve something, and then just keep a consistent approach to all of that. That's why I use that concept of container. We do a lot of strategic pods in our company where we just spin it up a one-off for an hour, talk about it, decide if there's anything to explore, get a signal, and if it's all just noise, move on.
You are also currently writing a book, correct? I think at one point it was the 33 codes. Now I see it's 42 codes, which you'll explain why that difference in a moment. But I also want to be very careful of the time. We don't have that much time left, and we have a lightning round ready for you. But I do want to speak to I do want to speak to this because it seems like you're trying to wrap up all of this knowledge in 33 or 42 different codes. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions about them. The first one is, what's your favorite code? First, explain a little bit the code and why it went from 33 to 42, but also, and I'll remind you of these questions, but what's your favorite code and what's the most recent, what code have you most recently used?
This is yours? Uh-oh. I'm going to answer that, but I need to move. I only booked this for an hour. I'm going to switch rooms. It actually leads perfectly to my code. Okay, we're back. You probably noticed a different background, which I'll explain, which leads very well into my favorite code. The idea around this was to try to pay it forward. I started doing these presentations to high school students every year who are interested in the music business. And they had so many questions about how to think and how to operate. And that was the genesis of the idea. The reason it changed from 33 to 42 is I was in LA at the Grammys, and I was telling a friend of mine, this woman I know, about it. And she said, "Oh, did you pick 33 because of Stephen Bartlett?" I said, "Who's Stephen Bartlett?" She said, "You never heard of him?" I'm like, "No." He's written a very, very famous book called Diary of a CEO and has a podcast and several businesses. I was like, and his book has 33 something or rather in the title. And so I frantically go on my phone and look up the Amazon book. I was like, oh, shoot. He's got 33. So 42 came from, I can't do less than 33, so I got to do more. No one has really done 42. There's like the 48 laws of power, but no one's done 42. And I'm a bit of a sci-fi guy, and it aligns to Douglas Adams and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So that's where 42 came from.
This is the 42 codes of the life, the universe, and everything, really.
Exactly. And then what's so great about this and the fact that I had to switch rooms was one of my favorite codes is one I wrote recently was, you're going to fuck up. You got to get used to it. You got to be okay with it. It's just going to happen. And one of the elements that I have found of very successful people in whatever career they're in, I'm talking spanning all different kinds of careers, is their ability to operate with ambiguity in the face of uncertainty and knowing that mistakes are going to happen. And it's how you respond to them, not whether they happen. And learning that skill is really important. It's tough. It's painful. It's emotional. But the more you can prepare yourself for that and manage against that, the more success you're going to find.
So that's your favorite. Well, I guess it's your favorite one, and one that you used the most recently. So that's a hack. And what are you going to do after you're done with the 42?
Oh gosh, I was thinking about. I wrote this article a long time ago called I guess it was unsung creative technocrat, something of that nature. Creative technocrat.
Well, that's what you said you call yourself, a creative technocrat.
Creative technocrat. You were asking, can you develop curiosity? I don't know. There are ways to inspire curiosity, but can you truly create it? I don't know. But you can and you must apply a creative mindset to running an organization. And that might be where I focus next, which is how can you build a creative mindset? And some of these are just almost just tools in the toolbox. So the destroy your company. You don't need to be a creative to go apply an exercise like that to your company. In fact, I have reminders in my calendar reminding me about, like, I'll come up with a question or something will hit me and I'll write it down and I'll put a calendar reminder. Don't forget to ask this if it makes sense this week.
Speaking of calendars, isn't there, don't you do something like that? Don't you name meetings in funny ways?
No, well, so I was going to start changing my password all the time to a different word to kind of, like I was going to use scaffolding as like my password week, and I was going to change it another week. I realized that's like way too complicated. I'm never going to be able to memorize my password.
That would drive me nuts.
Yeah. I'd be calling the support desk every day asking them for my password. But what I have done is you can rename yourself in your phone. And I tend to walk, I live in New York City. I tend to walk a lot. And particularly in the winter, I'll just text myself. I'll go, hey, Siri, text. And then what I do is I change my name in my phone. So my name in my phone is different all the time. And so sometimes this week I'm balance. Balance was a word I really wanted to focus on this week. Whoa, so I'll go, hey, Siri, text balances mobile.
Whoa. I did work with this guy named Joe DeSena. I helped him in the early days of branding Spartan Race. And you hang out with that guy enough, and he walks up to you and tells you just do 20 push-ups or burpees or whatever. I watched him throw away donuts from somebody's desk. It's like, you don't really want these, but like one of the things that he always said also was, you have to name your brain. He's like, my brain's name is Fred. And he's like, and because Fred is my enemy. Fred tells me to do bad things. Fred tells me it's raining outside, don't go run, and I yell at Fred. And what you're saying is like, you're like name your soul, dude. I mean, you're getting like even deeper with that one.
Yeah, I did. Last week I was Snarky was my name on my phone, because especially when I'm feeling a little bit over my skis or exhausted or under a lot of stress, I can tend to be a little snarky, which I don't like about myself. And I was doing that. So last week I was Snarky, and it was just, oh God, I don't want to be snarky. Don't be that guy. And it's just like a funny little life hack, but you'd be shocked at how effective it is every day. I mean, 10 times a day, I'm texting myself. When I came back from lunch today, I texted 2 things to myself that I wanted to look at or explore or remind myself about. And I'd say hey, Siri, text balances mobile.
I don't know why I've never texted myself. I mean, it just seems, I always have all these ideas and they're all over the place. They're on My Remarkable, they're in here, they're in there. It seems like this is just a great place to put everything for the day. And then at the end of the day, you just go and put them where they belong, right? Or, figure it out, or like, that's brilliant.
I mean, at first, the naming convention seemed like a positive psychology. Like, if I want to be more balanced, I'm going to call myself the thing that I want to be. But then you surprised me by giving yourself the name of the thing you didn't want to be also, which seems like, a negative psychology type of trick. I'm calling myself is almost like a punishment. I'm going to call myself Snarky as a punishment for having been too snarky.
Yeah, I don't know if
I'm
I was
overthinking that.
Yeah, you're probably overthinking. But yes, I guess it could be that. It really just depends on whatever works best for you. And I'll just go back to, you just got to try different things. If I had to give one piece of advice about how to be more curious, how to be more creative, just doing different things constantly, all the time. That's how you get your brain thinking in different ways. The same thing I was saying about people who read books. Just means your brain's bouncing around in different ways. I use this expression about, it's like a giant particle accelerator. You just got to get neurons moving in different directions all the time to create something new. My favorite expression I use probably too much with my team, which is, sometimes you have to go through the sewer to come out the other side clean. And it's just my way of saying, just let's start with like the bad ideas. Let's start with the worst way to fix this problem. Let's just, and it's a little bit of the throw spaghetti against the wall, but it's even further than that. It's a little bit of that destroy your company. Like, let's just solve this the worst way possible. And first of all, it's fun, right? Like, I want to enjoy myself and have a good time. I love what I do. I love running this company. I love my team. But there's also other ways to just both be serious and solve serious things. What we do is incredibly serious. What we do is so important and meaningful. And in fact, if you're enjoying it more, you're actually doing a better job of executing against that. And sometimes people think having fun and being serious run counter to each other. And yet I actually think they run hand in hand with each other.
There's a lot to think about there. So this book is not out yet. There's 42, is it 42 laws, 42 rules?
42 codes. I'm on 31 now.
31. And if people want to catch up and see them, where are you publishing them? Most just on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yeah. They're all going on LinkedIn right now. And then once I get to 42, I'm going to collate them and edit them and put them out as a book.
Oh, so you're writing them as LinkedIn posts or newsletters, and then you're just going to aggregate them at the end. Very cool.
I know a lot of people have written books that way, actually. The books flow in a very interesting way. Like this paragraph, and then the next post is the next paragraph, and they've written entire books that way, and it's because they get feedback, and it's sort of interesting. Really cool. So we're pretty much almost out of time. Aaron, do you want to do
Yeah. So, Jeremy, we have a rapid fire round that we like to wrap up every episode with some quick questions, quick answers, first thing that comes to your mind, and just answer whatever comes to you. All right. So, morning person or night owl?
Night out.
Night owl. All right. If you could wake up tomorrow with a brand new skill overnight, what would it be?
Any language. I could speak any language.
Incredible. If you could have dinner with any musician, living or dead, who would it be?
David Bowie.
Yeah.
What's one problem in the world today that you'd love to fix?
Rapid fire, you said. Helping people find more joy in life.
Beautiful. What's a weird or niche topic you would like to give or you could give a TED Talk on?
Drawing mazes.
Drawing mazes.
What?
I used to love drawing mazes when I was a kid. I was home recently. I found like a giant stack of mazes that I'd drawn. Some of them stretched over multiple pages as well.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
That's not an easy thing to do. Okay, cool.
A lot of attention to detail in this brain up here.
What's one thing that instantly makes you feel inspired?
People who are excited by what they do, whatever that might be, professionally, personally, family. When they come with energy, it instantly brings me up.
What's one place you've always wanted to visit?
Iceland. I don't know why I've never been. I've always wanted to go. Just looks beautiful. Great people, great food.
Beautiful.
What's the first concert you ever attended?
Oh gosh, it was Peter Gabriel, 1990. I forget what tour that was.
Okay.
And then my second was a little more impressive. It was the third Lollapalooza.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Nice.
It's a big jump. Peter Gabriel to Lollapalooza.
Followed by the third one, which was Jane's Addiction.
Right.
Nice.
Your I'm gonna date myself and just say your iPod must be pretty eclectic.
It's all over the place for sure.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the next question. Vinyl, cassette, CD, or streaming? What's your ultimate music format?
Streaming.
Okay. And last
I'm gonna
question.
make some enemies in the music industry with that answer. Vinyl will be a strong second, though.
Yeah, well, hopefully you're compensating about the work you're doing. And since Genius Scouts is all about introducing new voices to the world, who is an artist, innovator, or leader that you think people should know about?
Oh God, that's a great one. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet, but one of my board members is a company called Secret City Records up in Canada. The founder is a gentleman named Justin West, and he has an artist named Patrick Watson. And beyond just being an incredible, talented singer-songwriter artist, he is incredibly conversant in technology. And I'm just really excited the day when we're in the same place, I can sit down and talk to him about music and technology and where the world's headed.
Awesome.
I like to ask two other questions. Same questions to everybody. The first is what's going to change in the music industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
The one thing that will not change.
Okay, fine. We can skip to that question. What's not going to change in the next 5 to 10 years?
All right. Okay. I'll do it in the order you want. What's going to change? Virtually everything. The way we have to operate, the way that artists and songwriters make money, the way talent is found. I just think the tools, the technology that's coming along, all of that's going to just fundamentally change the way the industry operates. And then to the second question, what's not going to change? What's not going to change is music is the most powerful, emotive, creative product in the world. And people's love for it and desire to engage with it and engage with the people who make it, that's going to be ever present. That's never going to change. People want to connect with others. And no matter what technology comes along, they're going to want to know that there is a human being whose life and what they've experienced is what impacts what they create. That's going to be ever present.
So based on those two things, it seems like what you're saying is whatever you're doing, whatever part you role you play in the music industry, whether you're the CEO of Merlin, whether you're the CEO of a record label, whether you're in a band, understanding that aspect and using whatever changes in order to keep that alive is the goal, right?
That's absolutely the goal, is to be able to bring incredible music and the people behind it to the world. What we've tried to do at Merlin to support that is, I don't know what's coming next. Anyone who says that, tell me who I should be listening to, and I will listen to them. But what you can do is prepare an organization with a mindset to be able to handle change and be willing to adjust as the world changes around them. And that's what's most important, whether you work in the music industry or honestly any industry, because tomorrow something, you can't see around 90-degree corners, and you just don't know what's going to be coming for you next. And that's why if you have an organizational mindset that's creative, that thinks differently, that is willing to encompass change, then you're going to be able to not just survive that, but evolve past it.
It's beautiful. Well, Jeremy, this has been an incredible conversation. If there's one thing that stands out, it's your ability to challenge the way people think about leadership, decision-making, the world around us, the music industry, every industry. Thank you for sharing your insights, your experiences, and your perspective with us today. And for those that want to follow your work or connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Jeremy Sirota. You can find me on Instagram. Find us on merlinnetwork.org.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jeremy. And thank you to our listeners. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Genius Scouts podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes. And if you're ready to take your personal brand to the next level, visit geniusscouts.com.